And we're back. Rip Caswell with Caswell Gallery in Troutdale, Oregon is my guest today, and it's we've been just kind of discussing some of the things that have brought you to where you are, but there's a lot of things that inspire you that have a lot of really deep roots, and one of them being sort of the childhood innocence or innocence of childhood, I guess I should say. How do you explain that? How would you put that?
Well, I think as an artist and as a creative person, you have to step outside of your armor, I call it, where you become vulnerable, you become exposed. And anytime an artist presents a piece of art out there for the public to view it, they are very vulnerable. I mean,
they're putting a piece of themselves out there.
You're putting your heart and soul out there on the wall or in the gallery for people to critique and like or dislike, you know. And so that's a very scary place to go for a lot of people. And it's part of the process of being creative, to step outside of that, open yourself up to almost a divine source of inspiration, and then to allow that for yourself to be the channel that filters that through and then out your hands into something tangible that people can enjoy. And what I've been told is people look at my work and they say, you know, I've seen art that is anatomically good, and I've seen art that really captures the spirit, but I haven't seen somebody bring the two together, and that's the highest compliment that I can have, is that I'm able to capture that heart, spirit. And so what I do is I really feel it. I experience the emotions of the subject, whether it's a human or an animal. I try to put myself into that place. I did a project for Tom Tucker. He died over in Iraq, and for the city of Madras, and so I sat with the mother for hours in the family, and I asked about stories, and we cried together, we laughed together, and I experienced that young boy's heart and soul and spirit, and somehow that transfers into the clay. And I really don't know how that all works, but the first time that it happened to me, I realized there's really something a lot more happening than I'm even aware of. I was working on this Indian woman for the Grand Ron tribe, and all they had was this old photograph taken in the early 1800s. And when I looked in her eyes, I imagined that it was a candid photo, and she was reflecting over her whole life. And it had been hard. She had been in the Northwest Trail of Tears. Her village was raided as a little girl, and she climbed into a beaver dam and hid while all of her family was killed and massacred. But she's sitting there. Her grandmother had taught her how to weave baskets, and so she took that with her to McMinnville, and she was in this picture teaching her granddaughter how to weave baskets. And so it was this whole circle, and in her eyes I felt a sadness of loss, but a contentment that it was all worthwhile because this heritage was being passed on. And so these were all the emotions I was feeling as I sculpted her. I had this, and I worked all night long, and I was just about finished, and one of my gallery staff brought this woman back that morning to view the sculpture, and she just starts weeping as she's looking into the eyes of Martha Jane Sands, and she goes, you know, I don't know who this woman is or her story, but I feel this sense of sadness in her, but yet contentment. It's like she's reliving her whole life. She goes, it's like I'm listening to the stories of her life, and I'm just going, oh my gosh, you know. And of course, I hugged her, and
and this is all just from somebody looking at something that you created,
that I created, that they somehow were able to experience the emotions I experienced, and I think, you know, and that's what I feel when I see art, and so. When I see really good art, it affects me deeply, and so I think that opening ourselves up to, if you're in an art gallery, and just opening yourself up to really experience that piece of art to its fullest, and you know, I have a lot of people say, well, I can't draw a straight line, you know, but I believe we're all artists. We're all meant to be creative in some way. It may not be with brush or pen or clay or words, but just the creative energy of problem solving is an amazing gift, and the ability to have empathy with somebody else and know the right words to tell them in that moment. There's so many ways of creativity and allowing yourself to be that conduit. And but the visual arts, I think that almost anyone can try it. And really, I took a doctor and a whole group of people, but one of them was a doctor, to Mexico, Puerto Vallarta, and I taught a sculpting class, and she says, I can't sculpt. I don't know anything about it. Oh my gosh, she was in heaven when she's down there, she's relaxed, she's loving the beauty that she's surrounded in. Pretty soon she's in that clay, and we had went to the zoo, and there were baby jaguars that we got to hold and measure.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get her away from it. We go, let's go swimming, She says, no, I want to sculpt. And she just fell in love with it.
Really?
So I just encourage everybody to try. Picasso said the truest artist is that of a child at play. And so I think we can all become children in our own way and open ourselves up and be creative and just really experience the freedom of expressing our inner spirit, our soul.
Yeah, because as a child, you really, those inhibitions and those fears and that concern for judgment of others and stuff really isn't there. I mean, we kind of learn that as we get older. So tapping into that, or never really losing it, it sounds like in your case, is got to just be such a gift.
I love kids. I love watching them create. They are fearless, and they are so productive and so prolific. I mean, I've given kids clay, and within an hour they've got 3 or 4 sculptures created, and they're confident and they just attack it. They're not worried about what anybody else thinks. It's just this true self-expression of who they are and what they feel. And my son was funny. They've grown up around all this art their whole lives and just not really that impressed. But one day I was doing Mario for Nintendo. I was sculpting a figure for him. And he comes in, he goes, "Who's doing this?" And I said, "I am." And he goes, "You really are an artist." He goes, "This is art." And he got so excited. And I said, "Well, you should make something." And pretty soon he's sculpting all these characters that he was excited about.
Yeah.
And then pretty soon he's making up his own animals. He's got a half leopard, half crocodile thing,
Really?
He would sit there for hours, all day long, maybe 8-10 hours with me while I'm sculpting. And he's making up little armies of creatures and battles, and I go, "You're working so hard." He goes, "I'm not working, I'm just playing." I go, yeah, he's got it.
Yeah. Well, that's the magic in life. If you can find something that is not work and make a living at it.
My dad told me that when I graduated high school. It was the best advice I ever got. He said, "You'll spend most of your life at work." He says, "Find something you love to do, and you'll enjoy every minute of your work." And he says, and you'll be a success. He says, and there's different ways to measure success.
Absolutely.
And it's not always financial.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Rip, we're going to talk about those things that actually have brought you to a level of success that has also been monetary success, which is great. So don't go anywhere. Rip Caswell, and you're watching Localite. We will be right back.